You're listening to the Balanced Educator Podcast, episode number 48.
Welcome to the Balanced Educator. We're your hosts, Kaylee
and Josiane from EduCalm. Our intention is to equip and empower you to feel more calm, balanced, and joyful in all aspects of your life. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Balanced Educator Podcast. And of course, Happy New Year. It's so crazy. It's already 2019. Time flies when you're having fun. We hope that you had awesome holidays, that you got to relax and recharge your battery before you get going in the classroom again. We know we really enjoyed setting a bit of time aside for ourselves, and this is why we didn't have any episodes the last 2 weeks, because we just fully wanted to prioritize ourselves and spending time with our loved ones. And I think we accomplished that, and it feels so good to be diving back in. So, if you are new to the show, welcome. We're so happy you're here. And if you've been listening for a while, welcome back. If you haven't done so yet, we invite you to subscribe in iTunes and also to leave us a review if you enjoy the show. That would be the best Christmas/New Year's gift that we could ever receive. So thank you so much for taking 20 seconds out of your day to do this for us. And today we are interviewing Charlotte Jackson. Charlotte Jackson is a special education teacher and a mindfulness educator in Winnipeg, Manitoba. She is committed to teaching children how to live heartfully, so with a loving heart, and mindfully with a peaceful mind, in order to help them regulate their emotions and live with a greater sense of resiliency, positivity, compassion, and selflessness. So her values align so well with ours, and we are so excited to have her on. But before we get into the interview, we just wanted to remind you that EduCalm Teacher, the online course to learn how to become a balanced educator, is only open. Registration is only open for 3 more days. So the cart closes on January 10th, and then the course starts on January 14th. So if you are interested in joining, please go to www.educalm.com/teacher, and I'll put that in the show notes as well. So in 2019, don't waste your precious time feeling overwhelmed. Become a balanced educator. We will help you master mindful habits that give you a better work-life balance and make you feel more joy in and out of the classroom. So again, last call, the cart closes on January 10th. All right, let's go to the show. Welcome, Charlotte. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself to start?
I will. So my name is Charlotte Jackson. I am a special education teacher at Grosvenor School presently. I have been teaching for a long time. So this is my 30th year of teaching. I used to teach in a French immersion setting in the classroom. And since I've been a resource teacher, most of that has been in English. I have 2 sons that are grown. I've got 2 dogs and 2 cats, husband. So I've got a family full of creatures. I love yoga. What else can I tell you? I love the outdoors. Yeah, I think I've missed something, but I can't think of what it is.
I think I can think of what it is.
Yeah? Oh, the book part. Yeah.
Yes. So you wrote a book and you just released it very recently.
I did.
Can you tell us about your book?
I will. So this book is called Finnigan's Bliss. It was actually inspired by goat yoga, strangely enough. I went to that a couple of years ago. I went to goat yoga and loved it because I love.
Can you explain what it is?
Goat yoga?
Yeah.
Okay. So very little of it is actually yoga. It's mostly cuddling up with goats and laughing your head off, actually.
Amazing.
But I've got a picture of myself. Have you ever done it? You've never done it?
No,
You
I
must.
want to.
You must. It's just awesome. So actually, they'll crawl on your back and they'll crawl underneath you when you're in downward facing dog. They're very affectionate and they love being around people. So it's hard to focus on any posture because you're spending too much time oogling them and laughing. So it's a good time. Anyway, I've always loved goats. It's been a thing for me. And so when I went to goat yoga, and there's a lot of other things that kind of led up to the writing of this story, but basically that was the inspiration for Finnigan's Bliss. And it's about a little goat that is mindful. So I figured if a goat can do yoga, a goat can be mindful. And so this little goat goes about his day. His mother teaches him to appreciate every moment of every day. And so he has that very mindful kind of intention of appreciating the small little gifts in his life until one day things don't go as planned. And he has a little breakdown, a little temper tantrum, the way many of us do when things don't work out the way we want.
Yes.
And he meets a little friend. I call him my little Buddha frog because I was inspired by a little Buddha shape. That's how I had my illustrator draw him. And this little frog is very wise and kind of takes him to the next level of being a mindful creature and appreciating, the moment and getting through the emotion of the distress. So it's about emotional regulation. It's about compassion. It's about friendship. It's about all those pieces. All wrapped up in a little.
Yeah, it's an amazing book. I was just reading it before the interview to refresh myself, but I was just thinking of there's so many themes there. Like you say, it's a little story about heartfulness and mindfulness, but there's so much more to it.
Yeah, there is a lot to it.
Yeah, I even think the compassion piece, and there's also a growth mindset piece there that's kind of,
Yes.
hidden between the lines.
There is.
I absolutely love this little book. And I want to know why Finnigan.
Why Finnigan? I follow on Instagram a goat charity, and it's called Goats Are Anarchy. And I've been following them for a little while. And there was one particular little goat named Finn, and he was an adorable little light brown colored goat that I just fell in love with. And that was kind of how I got the name.
Okay.
So I turned Finn into Finnigan, and it kind of flowed nicely with the word bliss, Finnigan's Bliss. I just thought it sounded nice.
Absolutely, I agree.
Yeah.
I was just really curious. I had to ask.
Yeah, it happens to be one of my dog's names too. But it's funny because I got my dog at about the same time that I started writing the story. So I can't remember if I named the dog before the goat or the goat before. I don't remember.
It's all a blur.
Yeah.
You were trying to teach, you were trying to be a resource teacher and write a book and have all of your children and fur babies.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a lot going on.
Yeah.
So can you tell me what mindfulness means to you?
For me, mindfulness, I think, is living in the present a lot more than what I have done in the past. I tend to err on the side of being an anxious person. A lot of that anxiety stems from worrying about things that are going to happen in the future, or me having nostalgia maybe about the past. So sometimes that has a bit of sadness mixed in with it. My boys, for example, are adults now. They're 21 and 24. And honestly, the best time of my life was when they were small children. And so I do spend a lot of my time kind of looking back to that time like, if only it was 10 years ago and they were my little babies again. And so it's just about letting all that go. And actually that message is in my book too. What's in the past,
Yes.
let it go. Let it go and believe that in time things will turn out just fine. And that's really, I actually think I wrote the book for myself as much as I did for children. It's got messages in it that I think that adults can, reflect on and sometimes need a little bit of a reminder. So for me, that's probably the biggest piece, just kind of also letting life flow a little bit more than what I do, not trying to force change, because I get a little bit, anxious about or impatient with change and wanting things to kind of move at my pace, but trying to just take a breath and slow down and let life just kind of fall into place the way it is meant to fall into place. Keith McPherson has a great way of putting that, like things will happen in their own time, right?
Yes.
And just trust in that. And so for me, all those mindfulness teachings are something that I try and keep in my mind all the time. Yeah.
That's so great.
Yeah.
I had a question, but it just escaped my mind. Oh, I was going to talk about the flow piece that you were saying, that, you know, you tend to look in the past or the future, and you're saying that your kind of favorite part of your life was with your kids. But that's also another theme of the book. Like you said, like the flowing with whatever comes at you.
Exactly.
And being able to just take that deep breath and accept what is.
Accept what is. And that even though things seem kind of like a struggle at the time, that there's always something kind of hidden in there. There is a silver lining to these clouds that we have in our lives, right?
Yeah.
That, you know, sometimes we get so wrapped up in some struggle that we're having, or some nostalgia that we're feeling, or some worry that we're anticipating, that we're not noticing what's right in front of us.
Yeah.
What we have, right? And that is, again, part of the book. It is, yeah.
Yes. And so I'm wondering, you're a resource teacher, you're a full-time resource teacher. Which grades do you work with?
Kindergarten to grade 6.
Are you using this book as a resource teacher?
I am.
Can you tell me about that?
Well, I've really started by just going in as a guest reader and reading the story. And of course, I do teach mindfulness and yoga to the children at school, apart from the book. So they're already familiar with a lot of the mindfulness practices that we do. Actually, I think what I'm going to do is, after I've read the story and we've talked about all the different themes, I typically get the kids to understand what heartfulness is and what mindfulness is. So mindfulness being more that emotional regulation piece, the living in the moment piece, the appreciation piece, and then the heartfulness being kind of the compassion piece and the friendship and the generosity and the helpfulness, all those pieces. So we kind of look at where Finnigan and Samuel, the other character, are displaying either heartfulness or mindfulness qualities. And then I kind of thought a neat follow-up to that activity might be to create a bliss jar, so that the class can write down all the little things that happen that make them happy throughout the course of the day, and then fill the jar in the class. So that might be something that also gets done, but I haven't done that yet with the children. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And now I know how I'm going to use this book in my own classroom. I was going to read it to my students before this interview.
Yeah.
But then I just had a little something that said, you know, just wait till you talk to her so that I can tell my students about how I met you. And and I was wanting to ask how I was going to teach this in the classroom, and now I have a better idea of how to do that. So thank you.
You're welcome.
So how did life lead you to where you are right now? So the writing of this book and everything, tell me a little bit.
Okay. So, well, I've been a teacher since I was probably 12 or 13 years old. I started working with children. I was an only child, so I really craved being around other kids. So I started working at, the YMCA, and I was a camp counselor. I did all those things until I was old enough to worked in daycares actually as well. And then I went into the Faculty of Education, of course. That led me more or less to where I am now. And throughout the course of that time, I've been noticing anxiety increasing in children exponentially, which is quite concerning. So I recently, a couple of years ago, went and got my mindfulness educator training, because I really felt that was something that needed to be addressed in the school. And being a special education teacher, it was kind of right up my alley. On a personal level, I've been practicing yoga for about 25 years.
Wow.
And then within that course of that time, I've done, I've dabbled in meditation and mindfulness practice to a certain degree. But I think what really pushed me to practice it more personally and to really delve deeply into it was this need that I saw in the children. I myself, as I mentioned, tend to err on the side of being anxious. I was a very anxious child. I grew up in a difficult kind of home life and an only child. So I probably needed a lot of this kind of training as a child. It would have benefited me an awful lot, which is partially why I think I wrote this book, because I knew what I needed to hear as a kid. And then the reason I became an author at all was because of my own boys. So I started writing probably about 10 or 12 years ago. I started writing stories. We used to have a couple of pugs, and they are adorable little funny little dogs. So I started writing stories about these pugs, and I really just wanted to have a book that I could say, I wrote that for my kids. It was really just for my own two sons. And of course, none of those stories ever really turned out. So that in of itself is a good learning experience to teach children, because I tried and tried and tried, scrunching up the paper, throwing it in the garbage, feeling discouraged, feeling frustrated. This is never going to happen. Yet when I finally got that idea of Finnigan and that mindfulness and the goat, everything just seemed to kind of click. And that story just kind of created itself. It just kind of came out of me without a lot of effort. Mind you, a lot of revisions, but it was much easier to put the story together. It just seemed to click more. So that's kind of where I am now. Yeah.
So tell me about the process of writing the book. I'm curious about that.
It is a difficult process. There's no question. So I wrote that story, I guess, last summer. And I wrote it, and it all came out of me quickly. And I was like so proud of myself. Look, I made this story. And funny enough, my son's girlfriend's mother is a book editor. So she does children's books, mainly in Spanish though. But I thought, who better than to show it to her?
No
she
kidding.
would give me my, an honest opinion. And she looked at it and she went, nope.
Uh-oh.
No, it's not good enough. And of course I was crushed. It hurt to hear that, but I really appreciated that honest opinion. It forced me to go back and try again. So rather than give up, I thought, no, I'm really sticking with this idea because I know that this has value. I know that I can teach something to kids that they can really benefit from. And I knew that the character of that goat was so lovable that they would connect with that. So I wrote it again. I think I showed it to this particular person twice, and both times she said, no, it's not good. And both times I felt crushed because each time I wrote it, I thought, this is it. It's perfect. It's great. It's awesome. Scholastic is going to want to sign me tomorrow. So anyway, yeah, lots and lots of revisions. I went back to the drawing board several times. I added to that story. I pulled it apart over and over and over and over again, to the point where it was causing me a lot of stress, actually, that story. Even once I sent it to the publisher, I kept revising it. So they would send me back what they would put together for me, and I would still make changes. So it is a long process. And the way I teach it to the children is that it's not the best story, but it's my best story. So I feel proud of it because it is my best. So that's a good teaching. That's that whole growth mindset thing right there.
I love that this is my best book. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And speaking of growth mindset, like, I am absolutely fascinated that a 12-year-old, right, drew this book, which immediately made me think of the whole growth mindset piece that you can tell me about this child and these beautiful images. Like, these are so expressive and just gorgeous. Yeah.
Yes, they are. So Helen Yang, my illustrator, was a student at Grosvenor School, and she came to our school from China, actually. Well, she moved to, I think she lived in Hamilton prior to that. So her mother and father are new immigrants to Canada. So she came to our school when she was in grade 4, and I knew immediately that this little girl was very, very talented. By the time she got into grade 6, I was doing mindfulness work with the grade 6 class. So I got to know her a little bit better because I myself am not a classroom teacher. I never had her in my homeroom, so to speak. So when it came time for me to find an illustrator for this story, I've been following her on Instagram. So she has an Instagram where she posts all these very whimsical pictures, always of animals. And they're usually in some kind of comical position, like they're adorable, like smoking a pipe or reading a book or doing human things, which really showed to me that she was able to draw animals with human expression. So I contacted her and her mom, and they were thrilled at this opportunity because for her, it's a huge accomplishment. It's massive, right? So, and she's an extremely humble person, as her mother is. But then once she created all of these images, I went to her home and I got lots of wonderful Chinese food made for me all the time.
Awesome.
It was pretty awesome. Yeah. And she and her mom and I put all the pictures together and worked together on, because they are all kind of done digitally. So she's actually created them all by hand. They're all beautiful watercolor images.
Mm-hmm.
And she drew the goat in all these different positions, and she drew all these different backgrounds. It was a really cool process because it was all new to me. And then her mother is also an artist, and she's really good with all the digital piece. So they basically would overlay the pictures.
Wow.
So it looks, so we'd pick that goat and mix it with that background and mix it with that, animal. And we would create all these different pictures with all of these images that she had created with her watercolor paint. So yeah, it was kind of a cool process.
Absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
And how do you think that this impacted this
Her?
young girl? Yeah. Helen, you said.
Helen Yang is her name. I'm hoping that she feels like she can do anything. I know that she and her mother, they do a lot of art together, and they show it at a lot of the markets that go up. So there's one coming up this weekend. Third and Bird is coming up this weekend in Winnipeg. So I know that they're going to be showing a lot of their own art that they do. Her mom's a photographer, and Helen does all of the watercolor images. And so they do a lot of that. But she really has a future as becoming a book illustrator. And I think that is something that she really considered doing before I even asked her to do this, which was coincidental. I had no idea that was something that she was considering, but she definitely has a future.
No kidding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
When you told me that it was a 12-year-old that drew the book, the illustrations of the book, I couldn't believe it. It's absolutely mind-blowing.
It really is. It really is. And it adds to the whole childlike whimsy of the story, in my opinion. The kids love the pictures. They really do. They love the way Finnigan looks because he's cute. And I really tried to work with Helen to get that image of Finnigan just right. So he's chubby. He's kind of, he's adorable.
He is so cute.
Yeah. So she did a wonderful job. I'm so proud of her. She's a special, special girl. Yeah.
Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm like speechless. I'm like, okay, the interview's done now.
I know. Yeah. If you met her, you would never think she was as young as she was either. She's a very mature girl. She's very, very intelligent and very mature. So she's wise beyond her years. There's no question. Yeah.
It definitely adds to the themes that you're trying to teach.
It does. It works. Yeah. And I don't think that was even really the intention when I first got her, but it just seemed to work that way. It just all seemed to fall into place beautifully.
Yes. Yeah. So, yeah. So I would love to know, you talked a lot about how you did some yoga and some mindfulness with your students. Can you tell me how you practice mindfulness with your students at school, or
for sure,
that teaching piece?
Yeah, for sure. So typically what I do is I have a yoga mindfulness club, and basically morning recesses are either mindfulness in my room or we do yoga. And then I also do yoga after school with the kids, which is more of a 45-minute yoga class. And then the mindfulness I actually schedule in with my kindergarten kids, grade 3s and grade 6. I try and fit it, kind of spread it out over the years so that kids are getting it every couple of years. I wish I could do it with every grade.
No kidding, right?
It's too hard because my job is kind of multifaceted. So I'll plug myself into a grade for, let's say, about 4 to 5 months, and I'll go in once a week. And I use the Mindful Schools curriculum. I was trained with Mindful Schools in California.
Okay, yeah.
I use that curriculum, and then I also build in my own knowledge that I've just gained through different courses that I've taken in mindfulness. And that's pretty much what we do. So the kids are quite familiar with it, and they do enjoy it. They really do.
So what would be an example of like a 15 minutes spent with them doing mindfulness?
Okay, so I typically start with some kind of a teaching, whether it's maybe mindful bodies or finding an anchor spot or learning about mindful listening or maybe doing a body scan. I teach some concept, and then we always do a couple of minutes of breathing, and we're trying to apply the concept that I've taught prior into the breathing exercise. So there might be a visualization involved in that. There might be, like I say, like some, like a mantra that they're saying to themselves over and over, like, I am happy, I am healthy, or, may you be calm, may you be at peace, whatever the theme tends to be. Yeah. So and one lesson always builds on the next, so that there is that scaffolding.
What have you seen develop in your students that are practicing mindfulness with you?
Well, it's interesting because I often hear from parents actually more than I hear from the kids. And the parents will come back and tell me, my kids are coming home and they're teaching us all how to breathe at the dinner table. And they're all, they're teaching us to stop and appreciate the moment. So I find that really cool that they're taking these things home. And we talk about even like bedtime routines, like how to calm your body before you go to sleep. We talk about things like how to, problem solve with your friends and, send out kind thoughts and be generous and whatnot. So we kind of see it more on the playground. We hear about what's happening at home from the parents. And so it seems to be making an impact. And it's certainly becoming, what was maybe 10 years ago kind of, what would be the word, like on the edge kind of teaching, so to speak. This is becoming more normalized. It's becoming part of their everyday routine, and they're used to all the language and the vocabulary, and it's also normal to them now. It's not kind of fringe. That was the word I was thinking of. It's not like fringe practice, right?
Yeah. I was going to ask you, how do the parents react to it? Because it's often a question that we get is like, teachers are afraid that when they practice mindfulness in their own classroom, that the parents are going to find it strange or they're not going to be okay with it. Can you tell me about how the parents have reacted in your school throughout the years?
Yeah. It's been really good. We've had, I don't think I've had any parent take their kids out of mindfulness practice. I have had in the past a couple of parents take their kids out of yoga because they see that as maybe more of a religious practice. Though the way we do it at school is not, but it's just, their own decision for their children. But in any case, in terms of the mindfulness, there's nothing spiritual about it that we're doing in the schools, unlike maybe a meditative practice that you might do at home. So I think most of the parents understand that there is no spirituality connected with this. This is mainly about emotional regulation, about getting along with each other, about, working our brain to increase our ability to focus on our schoolwork. So that's the kind of message that the kids are getting over and over. And I think that's what they're taking home. So we haven't really had any kind of pushback from parents.
And what kind of feedback do you get from parents?
The parents are definitely very appreciative of it. And I think more and more parents themselves are practicing it. So, the fact that their kids are doing it at school has been, a bonus for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, good. That's great to know. And I think it's nice for our audience to hear that because
Absolutely.
It's often the fear, like teachers really want to practice it, but they're afraid of, the parents or what it might look like from the outside.
Exactly. I think really just framing it in that, the way I always start it with the children is our brain is a muscle, and just like we exercise the rest of our body when we go to gym, we have to exercise our brain. And strangely enough, rather than by working it super hard, it's about creating a sense of calm in our brain. That is what helps us learn how to focus it. So when we frame it in terms of this is making school easier for us, it's making all the stresses that come up throughout the course of the day more manageable. I think that's becomes a lot more easy to swallow for everybody, right?
Yes, I love the way you explained it. It's so simple. It's exercise for the brain.
It really is.
It's perfect.
It really is.
And that's really what it is.
It really is. And it's exercise for our heart too, when we talk about the compassion piece and the kindness piece. I mean, that's something that teachers have been doing since the beginning of time, right? Just teaching kids how to get along and be kind to each other as well as to themselves.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so we talked a lot about how you practice mindfulness with kids. How do you practice it for yourself?
Well, I really do try in the evenings to have some time alone in my bedroom before my husband comes in the room to have I usually put on actually a mindful, like a recording of some kind that I follow along with. But I am lucky that I do practice it in the day, so with the children. So that is really beneficial for me too. That's kind of more formalized, so to speak. But in terms of just day-to-day living, it really is, for me, just trying to take that moment in the day to appreciate like a small thing. So I know this is maybe an example that a lot of people have used, but the drudgery of cooking supper every night can be, it's just annoying and it gets on your nerves and you're tired of it. But it's just, I try and put music on. I try and, kind of keep my lighting comfortable in my kitchen. I try and just slow down and just kind of appreciate that moment rather than rushing through it. So those small little changes. I also find that having animals really helps because it forces you to get out the door and go for a walk.
Yes.
If I didn't have, and I know you have a dog too that you love. I see you on Instagram.
Both Kaylee and I.
Oh yeah. So I find that is so, so helpful. Even having a pet that just can sit up and snuggle with you on your lap, just to kind of slow your heart rate and just really get into that moment of cuddling with your animal or taking them outside and going for a walk. It changes the whole way you look at your day. It really does make a difference.
Our animals have so much to teach us.
So much to teach us.
It's amazing.
Yes, it is amazing. Oh yeah, they are truly mindful creatures. They really are.
Yeah, exactly.
Even a moment.
So by taking these moments, these mindful moments, let's call them, how has it impacted your life?
Well, I must say that I'm a much less stressed person than I used to be. When I was in my 20s and 30s, I was a pretty stressed person, I think. And I think I'm much more at peace with everything in life. And I always used to stress about my kids growing up, like how they're going to grow up and leave me, and how terrible. It's kind of what every mother goes through, this fear of your children leaving you. And now that they're there, I'm like, what was I stressing about? If only I could tell parents there's nothing to stress about. It's all, things happen when they're meant to happen. And I've really learned that through a lot of years of living, but just to go with the flow and let life just unfold naturally.
And it allows you to be in the present moment with your kids, right?
Yeah, so true.
Instead of just thinking about the past children that they were, right?
Yeah, exactly. Just like celebrating the grown-ups that they are now and all the really amazing, wonderful things that they have to offer in our relationship now, which is different. It looks different than it did when they were little, but it's just as wonderful, right?
It must be so crazy to watch someone grow.
Yeah.
From a baby to an adult like that.
It is weird. It is weird. Yeah. Yeah.
It must be fascinating.
It is.
I even feel like that about my dog that went from being a puppy and not knowing anything to an adult dog. I can't imagine a child.
Yeah, it's a process, that's for sure. You learn a lot along the way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And okay, so if you were parenting yourself is normally the question we ask, but first I want to ask you if mindfulness is something that you've taught to your own kids.
Strangely enough, no. And honestly, it's because had they been young when I started getting into this, absolutely 150% I would have. They are at a point right now that one is 21 and one is 25. So I can encourage it. They are aware of it. They need to kind of find their own path. At a certain point, a mother has to go, this is a really great thing that you should be getting into. So both of them have started to dabble in yoga.
Yay.
And, they have to kind of do things at their own, when they're ready for it. If they were small and impressionable, absolutely. If I'd known back then what I know now, like unquestionably, it would have been something we would have done every night before going to bed, or for sure. That's the one thing that I wish I could kind of have a redo on. But now they see me doing what I'm doing, and at the book, they understand. Like I do a few other things with Keith McPherson that I could mention regarding mindful intentions for schools. Yeah. So they see all the kinds of things that we're working on, and they do see the benefit. And so it's up to them now to kind of delve into it on their own. Hopefully they will.
The best thing you can do in any situation is model it, exactly. Right?
That's right.
So you're doing it.
That's what I'm doing. Yeah. They're young men right now, so it's not really, I don't think, the age bracket or to really get into stuff, because they don't really look at their lives with that kind of lens yet. You know, I think I think they need to get a little older to start going, there's more to life, or maybe things are stressing them out in, their work or their own families one day, and they need to start learning these skills. Sometimes we have to be pushed to that point before we realize that it's a benefit.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, for sure. That's totally my experience, and also Kaylee's.
I think for most people that is the case. Like my husband, for example, he is probably naturally this way. Like all the things that I've learned through the courses I've taken, through the experiences I've had with different people like yourself, who have been, very impactful in my life. I think my husband kind of just knew all that stuff instinctively. Maybe that was one of the reasons I ended up with him, because he just is kind of a mindful person. I think he came out that way. My younger son has a lot of these qualities innately as well. Yeah. So I think for a lot of people, you get to a point in your life where you feel maybe a little overwhelmed with things. And I think for most of us, that is what happens, because life is so crazy busy. Like you had a question about balance on your list that you provided to me before we had this interview. And balance is tough in this day and age. And, I was even having a conversation with a friend of mine who's got kids about the same age, and kids now have to study so much and so hard and do multiple degrees and perhaps face more than one career. Life is there's a lot of challenges, right? Not that it's not all great and all good, and we have to face it with that growth mindset. But I think sometimes it takes people being kind of locked into that corner before they open themselves up to these ideas.
Yeah. I have a lot of questions in my mind right now. But one of them is, like you talked about, today's kids. Yeah. So, and you've been teaching, you said 30 years now.
Yeah.
Can you talk about the difference in kids from 30 years ago to now? I would love to hear about it.
Yeah. It's funny. I see kids who use the word stressed out every single day. I've heard kids talk about wanting to hurt themselves physically. I hear kids saying even worse than that, unfortunately. Yeah. It is alarming. I'd never heard those kinds of things 30 years ago. I never heard a child use a term like I feel stressed out. So where are they getting this from? Everywhere. Right? We're being bombarded with it, whether it's the social media that they're exposed to, whether it's their own parent stress, which is not the fault of any parent. We're kind of inundated with stuff, right? So they may overhear their own parents using those terms like I feel stressed. But I think social media is a really big part of it, and technology, and just having too much stimulation coming at them at once. I also think kids are very highly programmed now, programmed for, I should say, more so than they were 30 years ago. 30 years ago, kids might be in piano lessons, they might be in swimming lessons. Now every kid is in ballet, hockey, piano, you name it. There's so many things going on for kids. On top of that, as they get older, they understand that competition is so much greater and they have to work so hard to try and prove themselves and to get ahead in this world. So there's just a lot of layers. But I don't work with teenagers, and I think that would be an entirely different ballgame, because I think for those kids who are so impressionable and who are so engaged with technology and social media, those messages are even that much stronger and more detrimental.
Yeah.
Especially when they're comparing themselves to other people. And I think that's probably the hardest part. Kids compare themselves. They're not good enough, right?
Yeah.
They don't look good enough. They're not cool enough. They're not, smart enough. They're not whatever.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's definitely something I hear in the classroom all the time too. I can't do this. I'm not, like those words, right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So how would you say that your job as a teacher has changed then since 30 years ago to now?
Well, doing what I'm doing, the mindfulness piece would not have existed 30 years ago. I mean, we had health education for sure, where we talked about social, emotional well-being, but not nearly into this kind of depth. I deal with, on a regular basis, a lot more crises, like where kids are having breakdowns and really hard on themselves. And that's something that I'm having to deal with more and more. We don't really have a school counselor. A lot of schools don't have school counselors. So the teachers themselves, as classroom teachers or resource teachers like myself, are dealing with those kinds of day-to-day. Yeah.
So would you say that teachers focus more on that than academics these days? Where would you?
No. It's a hard balance. You have to have that stability in your classroom before you can even tackle academics, right? So I think for a lot of teachers, they're starting their days with some kind of calming practice to make sure that those basic needs, so to speak, are being met, whether they're physical or emotional, before any learning can really take place. Because if you're dysregulated, there's not much learning that's going to go on anyway. So it's a real balancing act for sure. Yeah.
Okay, so now I'm going to go to another question that's kind of related. You talked about you have programs or you're doing things with Keith McPherson, and Keith McPherson has been on the show before. I'll put in the show notes which episodes he was in because I can't remember at the moment.
Yeah.
But can you tell me what you're doing with him?
Okay, so Keith and I met each other quite a few years back, actually. He was my yoga instructor, and I just thought the world of him. I don't know if you've ever taken yoga with Keith, but he's pretty fun.
Yeah.
He's a very happy,
and his music.
upbeat person. And his music is so beautiful. Yeah, exactly. So I happened to be going to a conference down in California called the Bridging Hearts and Minds Conference. Bridging Hearts and Minds. Yes, that's what it's called. And it's really for teaching youth that have experienced some kind of trauma, and it brings in a lot of mindfulness practice and compassion and whatnot. And I was telling him, Keith, you should go and you should be a presenter at this thing because you're awesome and you could have a lot to offer. So he and I started talking and getting to know each other. And before we knew it, we realized that we were neighbors. So he actually lives across the street from me.
Still to this day or no?
Well, he only moved this past summer, which I'm very sad about. But it's so funny because we've been living literally across the street from one another for 12 years.
Classic
so
Manitoba, such a small place.
But how sad is it that we're neighbors and we never even saw each other? Gosh, anyway, God. So anyway, that kind of spawned a relationship. So I ended up having him, this is going back about 5 or 6 years. He came to my school to do a PD for the teachers that I work with. And of course, I started downloading his mindful intentions, which I love and use them every day. And a lot of the teachers in my school started using them. And I went out for coffee with him one day and I said, Keith, you've got to make these for kids because some of them are a little bit more spiritual than we could use in school, or they touch on concepts that kids really couldn't necessarily relate to. And I wanted them to be attainable for children no matter what socioeconomic background they came from, no matter what culture they came from, that they could get something out of them. So I said, Keith, why don't you make these for kids? And he said, Charlotte, why don't you make them for me for kids? So I did.
Awesome.
Yeah. So that took about a year. So for over a year, I used his intentions, and I made them more or less school and kid friendly. And so they are now downloadable, or I guess you can sign up for them, subscribe for them, and they pop up in your inbox.
Yeah. I receive one a day.
Yeah, so we put them at our the front of our school on our whiteboard, so that any visitors to the school come in and they read them, and we read them over the announcements every morning, so that it's a kind of a morning message for the students to think about before they start their day.
That's wonderful.
So different ways you could incorporate that.
Yeah, you're getting the wheels turning of how to use them. Do you have you heard of ways that other teachers are using them as well?
Well, I think that one of my teachers was going to use them in her classroom and do a little bit more in-depth teaching around them. So it got me kind of thinking as well. I ended up kind of classifying all the intentions based on kind of a theme, whether it was compassion or generosity or integrity or gratitude, or you name it. So there ended up being about 20 different themes to all these intentions, and they all kind of fit in one of the themes or another. And so I took this idea to Keith that we should actually create little lessons around those intentions.
Yeah.
So that is kind of what we're doing right now, is creating full lessons for teachers that kind of they're based on that intention and that larger teaching, whether it's, like I said, gratitude or integrity or self-esteem, positive self-esteem, or all those things that we want for our children.
So where can our audience subscribe?
It is at ponolifeschools.com for the intentions that are free and downloadable into your inbox. And my book is on there as well, but the lessons have not yet been finished. That is something that is still in the process of being created. So
one day,
very soon, I'm hoping.
I look forward to that day. That's going to be great.
You.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And can people purchase your book directly there?
They can purchase it on that Pono Life Schools website. Yes, it's also available at McNally Robinson and at Prairie Sky Books in Wolseley, and it's also available on indigo.ca.
Awesome. Wow, it's all over the place already. Good job.
Oh, yeah.
So look for Finnigan's Bliss, everyone.
Yes.
It's amazing.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Josiane.
I wanted to ask you what Pono Life stands for.
Pono Life is actually a Hawaiian term that is all about living in balance with nature and kind of really going with the flow of life. It's an ancient Hawaiian way of thinking, and all of Keith McPherson's teaching, his mindfulness teaching, is all based on that Hawaiian philosophy, that ancient Hawaiian philosophy. So Pono is a Hawaiian word. It's not porno. Just a lot of people go, porno life? No. Pono life. Awesome. Don't confuse the two.
That. That's so funny.
Yeah. So that's basically what it is. There will be like a really beautiful definition of that word is going to be on the site, so that everybody that subscribes to it can really get an understanding of the true meaning of that word.
That's great. Mm-hmm. Good. Yay. So now I'm going to ask you, we're going to cycle back to this question. If you were parenting yourself, how would you teach mindfulness to your younger self?
Oh, this was a good question because I really needed it as a little kid. My father, just to give you a little bit of history, my father was an alcoholic and I was an only child. And so there was I'm sure you've heard of those kinds of homes. It's definitely a hard place to grow up. And so you end up being kind of an anxious person. And what I did was I put a lot of pressure on myself to be perfect so that my mother would have, me, nothing else. I was there to kind of save the day. And that intense pressure that I put on myself, I think I ended up getting an ulcer by the time I was in grade 7. And I was very, very afraid of making mistakes. I was very afraid of failing at anything, because I would look at myself as being a failure or a disappointment to my mom, although she never put that kind of pressure on me at all. I put it on myself. So I think it would have been teaching me more about self-compassion, about teaching me how to make mistakes, that making mistakes is part of the learning process, and it actually makes us stronger in the long run. And I would have also probably built up my own sense of self-esteem and confidence, know that I had value and worth, despite what other people thought, despite what any other messages I was getting externally, that I had value and worth just because I was me, right? So I think kids all need to hear that. Yeah.
I agree. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So from where you are today, what advice would you give your younger self?
Oh gosh, I would tell myself, what would I tell myself? I think really just that things, what Samuel told Finnigan.
Yeah, it's the book, eh?
Believe that in time, things will turn out just fine. And that's really what happens. Things fall into place. Yeah.
You wrote the book for your younger self?
I really did. I'm going to cry. I did.
Through this conversation, I can just see that there's just a lot of parallels there in your history. And yeah,
for sure.
It's wonderful. Yeah. All right. So other than visiting ponolifeschools.com, where can we connect with you?
Yes, on my email. My school email is fine, actually. My work email is cjackson@wsd1.org.
Awesome.
Yes. And I'm actually in the process of creating a Facebook page too. So that will be called Pono Life Schools as well. So once that's up and running, you can check that out.
Sounds good. Okay, yeah. Thank you so much. And I encourage everybody to go buy your book and read it to your students, because there's so many teachings in it. So Well done. And thanks for coming on.
It's my pleasure, Josiane. And well done to you too. You are doing some amazing, amazing things with kids. I'm so impressed with you.
Thank you. We love it. Awesome interview with a local author. So much fun. In case you are in Winnipeg or surrounding area in Manitoba, I thought I would let you know and invite you to Charlotte Jackson's book launch for Finnigan's Bliss. It will be this coming Sunday, January 13th at 2 p.m. And that's at McNally Robinson Bookstore. And also thought it would be worth mentioning that the mindful intentions that Charlotte talked about on the ponolifeschools.com website that you can subscribe to, they are available both in French and English. So for all of our French and French immersion teachers out there, this is another tool that you can use in your classroom. So your exit ticket for today is to go check out EduCalm Teacher and see if it's the right fit for you. So some of the things that some of the EduCalm Teacher alumni have said about this course is, Emily says, I really enjoyed how to take control of my own emotions by creating routines that set me up to feel calm and joyful despite the events of the day. Renee said, this course really helped me understand the psychology and physiology behind mindfulness and creating positive habits. And Carolina says, I've already recommended this course to multiple people as I truly believe it's a great way for teachers to take time to tune into their own beliefs and habits to create change. If this resonates with you at all, go to www.educalm.com/teacher, and EduCalm is spelled EduCalme. And I will also put the link in the show notes. Now, what are we up to this week? This week, we've got lots of meetings. Kaylee and I will actually be spending a bit of time together. She'll be here in Winnipeg, and we have a workshop, EduCalm Classroom workshop on Thursday that Kaylee will be running. And we are so excited because on Friday, we are visiting the education department of the university that we went to, and we're doing a workshop with the students there that are in education. And that's like really exciting for us. That's been on our bucket list for quite some time now. And on Saturday morning, I'm going to do a workshop with some people who work in daycares of Manitoba. And as it is a new year, Kaylee and I will be taking some time to really get into the nitty-gritty details of what we want 2019 to look like, to feel like, to sound like, to smell like, etc., etc. And that's actually what next week's episode will be all about, like how we do our goal setting for the year and how to stick to it. So stay tuned for next week. And in the meantime, may you have the most amazing week back with your kiddos at school.
Hey there, Balanced Educator. We appreciate you and the work that you're doing in the world. We are here to support you, so we've created a free resource library for you to use anytime you want. Resources for mindfulness for you and your kiddos at home or in the classroom. You can get these free resources by going to www.educalm.com/The Balanced Educator. Again, that's www.educalm, that's spelled educalme.com/The Balanced Educator. Thank you for being a part of our EduCalm community.